Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP-Leadership Group, and this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. And I'll admit it's a little longer than what I've had in the past because there's so many things to cover. It would be incomplete if I didn't cover what I have put together for this evening. Hot Topic Bold Talk is really a way to look honestly at what's going on now. And so I spend a lot of time looking at multiplicity of references and seeing how they combine to tell a story about what Trump and Musk are doing, along with the Republican Congress that is taking no action. I've titled this podcast America's First or Trump First, exposing the betrayal. Now, Trump's casino mentality is like playing games with America, and that's what I saw in the last week with drama and his narcissism. I described Trump in my previous podcast as a casino player who thinks you have to have the cards, and if you don't have the cards, then you can't play in his world. He certainly proved that with the tirade he had with President Zelensky in a public meeting. Don't be fooled. That meeting was choreographed, and it made Trump look like a stupid human being. You got a real view of his narcissism and game playing, along with his immature adolescent male counterpart, Vance. I don't think game playing with the lives of people that live in Ukraine is acceptable at all. The world has seen who Trump and Vance are and support President Zelensky and go into great detail about the stances they're taking. So I'm going to give you some of those this evening. If you're not embarrassed and horrified what Trump and Vance did, then you have no idea what it means to put citizens of this country first. You have not accepted who Trump is. He has no appreciation for the citizens of the United States, and all his promises he made to you are lies. It is time to see him for who he really is. And be assured, I know that when I pay any attention to his address to the nation, it will be filled with lies. So we'll have fact checkers. We'll put that. And so not having the truth is one of the greatest disasters that we have, because in a democracy, you need truth in order to maintain a democracy. In this podcast, we'll also describe the voices that are speaking out for all of us. They're the ones that are saying our democracy is threatened, that the rule of law is threatened, and that citizens are being treated with disdain, and we need to stop it. Because we don't treat people like that in America, unless you're a mega Republican or Trump or one of his friends. These individual people and groups that are speaking out are doing everything to stand up and say, I will not support what is happening in Washington, D.C. I will share stories of people that are GOP and refusing to stay quiet. Those of you that voted for Trump had no idea that Trump's promises to improve your life was a lie. And I'll have stories about that in my next podcast. Trump would support and put Musk in charge to conduct and carry out Project 2025 with no respect or caring for the American people that have served us for many years as civil servants. Yes, he lied. He had no intention of doing anything, lying about Project 2025 2025, and that he's going to put it into effect, and that's what he's doing. Know that all my comments come from many different sources, and I will be loud, clear, and firm about the travesties that I see that we can no longer ignore. Setups and political games have real consequences. The best summary statement I can give you is from a woman that I highly respect. She's a Congresswoman, Lizzie Fletcher, that happens to be Congresswoman for our section of Texas. And in her newsletter on Foreign Affairs on Friday, February 18th, 2025, she made some very clear statements that I think describe what happened. Here are her statements. On Monday, the United States shocked the world when on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, it voted with Russia and against our European allies in a UN resolution calling for an end to the war and condemning Russia's aggression. Coming on the heels of President Trump's suggestion of negotiations with Russia to discuss an end to the war, holding high-level delegation talks between our two countries without including Europe or the Ukraine, and his false accusation that the Ukraine started the war, and statements calling the Ukraine President Zelensky a dictator, this vote signals a monumental shift in long-standing U.S. foreign policy. The Trump administration's shocking decision to align with Russian President Putin has eroded the United States' relations with our European allies and our position in the global world. Well, we continue to process what this means for all of us, she says, for our global allies and for our national security, as well as our withdrawal of global presence through the U.S. aids and important programs around the world. What we witnessed from the President and Vice President of the United States in the Oval Office in today's meeting with President Zelensky was a disgrace. Was a disgrace. Think of that. It was a disgrace. As representatives of the American people, they utterly failed us. They betrayed our values and our history. Rather than fighting the bullies, they were the bullies. This is not who we are, and we all must make it clear that this is not what we approve of. Zelensky meeting. Be assured that Vance and Trump had planned this and orchestrated it. It was choreographed to be a disaster, but it was a disaster for Trump. Tom Nichols of the Atlantic Daily has some real clear statements. And remember, all my references I use are ones that you will receive a whole list of so that you can look at them yourself. He published a setup, an ambush. Here's what he said. Leave aside, if only for a moment, the utter boorishness with which President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance treated Ukrainian President Zelensky at the White House today. Also leave aside the spectacle of American leaders publicly pummeling a friend as if he were an enemy. All of the ghastly and things that they said to Zelensky today should not obscure the geopolitical reality of what just happened. The President of the United States ambushed a loyal ally, presumably so that he can soon make a deal with the dictator of Russia excel at a European nation fighting for its existence. That's what Trump did. Trump's advisors will probably declare the meeting a win and try to say he was putting America first, which is a lie. And those who apologize for him will likely spin and rationalize this shameful moment as just a heated conversation, the kind of thing that happens in Washington speak, which used to be called frank and candid exchange. But this meeting reeked of a planned attack, with Trump unloading Russian talking points on Zelensky, such as blaming the Ukraine for risking global war, all of it designed to humiliate Ukraine leader on national television and give Trump the pretense to do what he has indicated repeatedly he wanted to do anyway. Side with Russian President Putin and bring the war to an end on Russian terms. Trump is now reportedly considering, he already has done that on Monday, to immediately end all of the military aid to the Ukraine because of Zelensky's supposed transactions that he did in a meeting. Vance, as president of the White House, also suggests something. It's part of the choreography. The meeting was a setup. Vance is usually an invisible backbencher in this administration with few duties other than some occasional trolling of Trump's critics. The actual business of furthering Trump's policy is apparently Elon Musk's job. This time, however, Vance was brought in to troll not only Americans, but a foreign leader. And Marco Rubio, in theory, America's top diplomat, was also there, but he sat glumly and silently while Vance pontificated like an obnoxious graduate student. Zelensky objected, as he should have, when the vice president castrated him for not showing enough personal gratitude to Trump. And then, in a moment of immense hypocrisy, Vance told Zelensky that it was disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Zelensky is not the one that created this. It was Trump and Vance. But baiting Zelensky into fighting in front of the meeting was likely the plan all along, and Trump and Vance were soon both yelling at Zelensky. This is going to be great television, Trump said during the meeting. The president at the time sounded like a mafia boss. You don't have the courage. You're buried there. But in the end, he sounded like no one so much as Putin himself, as he hollered about gambling with World War III, as if starting the biggest war in Europe in nearly a century was Zelensky's idea. After the meeting, Trump dismissed Zelensky and then issued a statement. I have determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels an involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want an advantage, I want peace. Trump, lying as he did, disrespected the American people in the Oval Office, which is a cherished place for true leaders of the United States. And he is not one. And he made a final comment, and he can come back when he's ready for peace. The peace that the Russians approve of. The sheer rudeness shown to a foreign guest and friend of the United States was deplorable as a matter of manners and grace. But worse, Trump and Vance acted like a couple of online Kremlin sock puppets instead of American leaders. I want to repeat that again. Trump and Vance acted like a couple of online Kremlin sock puppets instead of American leaders. They pushed talking points that they either knew or should have known were wrong. Even if Zelensky were as fluent and capable in English as Winston Churchill, he would never have been able to rebut the flood of falsehoods. Today's meeting and America's shameful vote in the United Nations on Monday confirmed that the United States is now allied with Russia and against Ukraine, Europe, and most of the planet. Zelensky has endured tragedies and risked his life in ways that men such as Trump and Vance cannot imagine. But no matter how disgusted anyone might be at Trump and Vance's behavior, the strategic reality is that this meeting is catastrophic for the United States and the free world. America's alliances are now in danger and should be. Trump is openly and gleefully betraying everything America has tried to defend since the defeat of the Axis 80 years ago. The entire international order of peace and security is now in danger as Russian autocrats, after slaughtering innocent people for 3 years, look forward to enjoying the spoils of their invasion instead of standing trial for their crimes. One of the things posted on X by one of Putin's individuals said, the insolent pig finally got a proper slap down in the Oval Office. Friday, February 28th, 2025, will go into history books as one of the grimmest days in American diplomacy, the beginning of a long-term disaster that every American, even U.S. allies, and anyone who cares about the future of democracy will have to endure. With the White House betrayal of Ukraine capping a month of authoritarian chaos in America, Putin, along with other dictators in the world, can finally look at Trump with confidence and think, oh, yes, he's one of us. Now, if you want more information about that, there are many articles that describe what happened. Aaron Blake did a fabulous statement in the article from the Washington Post. 4 takeaways from the Trump-Zelensky meeting that evolved into a shouting match. There's some that come after that from the Washington Post that say Trump's factual flubs set things off. So Trump did it on purpose, set things off with his factual flubs, and created a fight. Trump's kid gloves with Putin loom large. The New York Times, Europe rallies around Zelensky after explosive White House meeting. The Time magazine, world leaders react to Zelensky and Trump's Oval Office showdown. There are many comments that were made by leaders around the world. Finland said, and I'm only picking 2, I picked Europe, but Finland said the heroic fight of Ukraine against Russia's war of aggression is about the existence of Russia as a nation. We in Finland understand what Ukraine is going through. Sweden Prime Minister said, we support Ukraine. You are not only fighting for your freedom, but also for all of Europe. The Atlantic had an outstanding article on a man who actually stands up to Trump. Zelensky's very reprimands everyone who surrenders to Trump. Zelensky's actions were a reprimand to every one of you that had no guts in the Congress to stand up against Trump. The owner of the Post, unfortunately, has decided that he's going to do something and try to work with Trump. And so, unfortunately, he allowed an article that I think is outrageous, but I'll give it to you anyway, and it is in the list. Zelensky must mend the breach with Trump or resign. I don't agree with it, and certainly the Ukraine people do not. They are in real support of him, and they're making comments about it. The greatest deception, though, is Trump's broken promises. Everything he has said, he is not going to do. When I read that Trump had the audacity to talk about a gold card to citizenship, I knew we had welcomed in the narcissist who feeds on drama. I appreciated reading an article called The Mercenary in Chief. It not only addresses his tirade with Zelensky, they comment on Trump's ideas to replace the EB-5 program to a gold card reduces the American interests, practice principles, and ideals to pure power and extreme greed for wealth or material gains. And that's who Trump is. I doubt seriously that this title would even exist in the time of another president. The Washington Post has one. Freed Proud Boys and J64rs take DC by storm, our house. Another publication, DOGE quietly deletes the 5 biggest spending cuts it celebrated last week. The cuts highlighted on an earlier version of the wall of receipts posted by Elon Musk's team contain mistakes that vastly inflated the amount of money saved. This is written by 5 outstanding authors, all from different news centers. Here's some more things that are harmful that Trump has done. In the Washington Post, we see the House Republican budget leaves states holding the bag on Medicaid. The people who have the least amount of money in America who benefit from Medicaid and can maintain their health are now going to be left to the states. And I can guarantee you they will not get the insurance they need, which is going to cost all of us more because the emergency rooms are still going to have to take people in. And we're going to have a lot of people sick because they don't have the right to health insurance. Another thing the Washington Post wrote, how DOGE created a horrific crisis at a highly sensitive nuclear weapons agency. A perfunctory mass firing alarmed the entire nation as cost-cutting missteps throughout the government really rattle lawmakers because they know it's about security, and this Musk has no understanding of what our country is or what it represents or the history we have, nor does Trump. The real America first. Let's hear the voices that are truly fighting for democracy. That phrase is ridiculous for Trump to ever even bring it up. Here are the voices speaking out. Behind the scenes, GOP senators challenge legality of Trump's aid cuts. Senator Lindsey Graham, who's a close ally of Trump, who lauded the U.S. AIDS cuts, quietly joined Democrats in expressing alarm. about the cuts. Teachers' unions are now suing to overturn Trump's crackdown on race and DEI in the schools. The courts are speaking out. And I'll get more into that in the next podcast. But there's an excellent article on Trump can't fire head of independent watchdog agency without cause, judge rules. A federal judge cleared Saturday that the president cannot remove the head of the Office of Special Counsel, which investigates whistleblower reports filed by government workers. The case is likely to head into the Supreme Court for a showdown over the president's power. Other actions taken is the IRS has refused to give the addresses of people who are believed to be in the United States illegally. I want to say this is ridiculous. These people have been with us for years. They pay their taxes. They live in peace in our communities. They contribute to our communities. And Trump wants to deport them? They're not criminals. So he lied again. He's only deport criminals. That is not true. He's going to attack anyone that was able to come into this country that Biden allowed to come in because he's pissed off at Biden. So he'll attack these people with no reason. I really appreciated Aaron Black's article 2 that's titled Embarrassing, Cruel, Absurd Extortion. GOP moderates find voice on Trump as their Republican counterparts avoid criticizing Trump like the plague. A handful have begun using some powerful words. So you need to get to know these people. Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is a Republican from Alaska. John Curtis, who's from Utah, he's a representative. Don Bacon, who's a representative from Nebraska, and Brian Fitzpatrick, who's a Republican from Pennsylvania. All are Republican, are standing up and shouting about what is going on. The one from Alaska said, if Elon Musk truly wants to understand what federal workers accomplished over the past week, he should get to know each department and learn about their jobs before he tries cutting them. Our public servants work hard to ensure that our national security is protected. Republican Don Bacon said on the social media, this is all embarrassing. We are better than this. Moral clarity. Russia's invaded its neighbor because it wanted its territory and couldn't stand the thought of the Ukraine run by a democracy. Another one is Judge blocks Trump's administrative mass firings of federal workers. A federal judge has ruled that the termination at agencies, including the Department of Defense, were probably illegal. This action was brought by a group of labor unions. The U.S. District Judge William Alsop ordered OPM to rescind its previous directives to more than 24 agencies. It is the biggest roadblock so far to prevent Trump and Musk from slashing the federal workforce. Here is one of the best articles, and it was sent by a friend of mine, and I'm very thankful he sent it to me because it shows Trump, Musk, and the GOP Congress exhibit the classic stupidity. David Brooks for the New York Times published the 6 Principles of Stupidity on January 30th, 2025. And he said, this week, in which the Chinese made incredible gains in artificial intelligence and the Americans made incredible gains in human stupidity. I'm sorry, he said, but I look at the Trump's administration's behavior over the last week, and the only words that accurately describe it is stupid. An Italian historian once said, the probability that a certain person be stupid is independent of any other characteristics of that person. So these people may think they're intelligent, but they're acting stupidly. He said, I define stupidity as behaving in a way that ignores the question, what would happen next? The administration produced volleys of stupidity this week. It renewed threats, which Trump's doing again, to impose ruinous tariffs on Canada and Mexico that would drive up inflation in America. It will drive up inflation. It's going to affect all of us. It attempted a broad and general purge of the federal workforce. This is Trump's administration, apparently without asking how that purge would affect government operations. But I like to focus on one other episode, he says. The attempt to freeze federal funding on assistance programs and Trump's subsequent his decision to reverse the course and undo the freeze is only a political action, because he still hadn't paid for some of it. But it's still true that we're going to have to learn a lot about stupidity over the next 4 years. I've distilled what I've learned so far into 6 main principles about stupidity. Principle 1, ideology produces disagreement, but stupidity produces befuddlement. This week, people in institutions across America spent a couple of days trying to figure out what the hell is going on. This is what happens when a government freezes roughly $3 trillion in spending with a 2-page memo that reads like it was written by an intern. When stupidity is in control, a professor says, words become unskewed from their relation to reality. I love this article because I think it's finally described to me what in the world is going on, and I hope it'll help you. Principle 2, stupidity often inheres in organizations, not individuals. When you create an organization in which one man has all the power and everybody else has to flatter his perceptions, then its stupidity will surely result. A German theologian said, this is virtually a psychological law. The power of one needs the stupidity of the others. The power of one person needs the stupidity of the others. And we're seeing it so vividly in this country. Principle 3, people who behave stupidly are more dangerous than people who behave maliciously. Evil people at least have some accurate sense of their own self-interest, which might restrain them. Stupidity dares greatly. Stupidity already has all the answers. And that's what Trump and his friends think. Principle 4, people who believe stupidity are unaware of the stupidity of their actions. People who behave stupidly are unaware of the stupidity of their actions. You may have heard the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that incompetent people don't have the skills to recognize their own incompetence. Hagseth and Gabbard Corollary has something to say to all of us. The Trump administration is attempting to remove civil servants who may or may not be progressive, but who have tremendous knowledge in their field of expertise, and hire mega lawyers who often lack domain knowledge or expertise. The results may not be what the mega folks hoped for. Principle 5, stupidity is nearly impossible to oppose. Against stupidity, we are defenseless because stupid actions do not make sense. They invariably come as a surprise. And that's what's been happening the moment he got into office. Trump did. Reasonable arguments fall on deaf ears. Counter evidence is brushed aside and facts are deemed irrelevant. Here's another quote. In all this, the stupid person, in contrast to the malicious one, is utterly self-sacrificed, and being easily irritated becomes dangerous by going on the attack. And guess what happened with Zelensky? So principle 5 is exactly what Trump and Vance did. Principle 6, the opposite of stupidity is not intelligence, it's rationality. A psychologist defines rationality as the capacity to make decisions that help people achieve their objectives. People in the grip of the populist mindset tend to be contemptuous of experience, prudence, and expertise, helpful components of rationality. It turns out that this can make some populists willing to believe anything: conspiracy theories, folk tales, and internet legends, that vaccines are harmful to children. They don't live within a structured body of thought, but within a rare party chaos of prejudice. I hope this article on stupidity can explain the insanity that is going on in this country. The GOP is filled with people in Congress who act stupid since they refuse to act and take a chance that the United States citizens that elected in their position would back them up if they stood up against him. The GOP congressional members have had very difficult town meetings since the electorate is screaming at them. These experiences ought to give them a message about what they should do. However, they're stupid and locked into the stupidity of Trump. The cabinet members lied in meetings about supporting Musk, yet there is an article out saying what they said after the cabinet meeting. Musk attended the cabinet meeting. He's not a cabinet member. This is not what happens in legitimate presidential administrations. Now, in my next podcast, I will provide a great amount of detail about Public Citizen, which has lots of lawsuits against the Trump administration, and they're moving through the courts. I will provide information on the 3.14 Action Fund, which is fighting back. There's important information from the National Democratic Redistricting Committee with their newsletter, All on the Line. All of us need to help elect Democrats and moderate Republicans that are standing up for our democracy. Musk has decided to spend his money in Wisconsin to defeat Susan Crawford, who is the more qualified candidate. We must support Susan Crawford with our money, time, and any way, because Trump and Musk is trying to buy another election. Is that what we want in our democracy? Her name is Susan Crawford. She's in Wisconsin. And I will give you references on how to get in contact, because it is reasonable. All you have to do is go out and look for Susan Crawford, who is the only qualified candidate for judgeship in Wisconsin. You'll also need to hear about what Jeffries is doing in the Rural Democrats Turnout Fund. And if you read my script, which is my blog on this particular podcast, you will have all their emails and things that you want to contact them. In my next podcast, you'll hear about the UK, France, and Ukraine agrees to work on ceasefire plans. Can't trust the United States for sure. And I've changed my mind about a group that I thought was a magazine was somewhat off the wall, and it's not. Mothers Jones is something that I will be talking about, and it's a 2024 National Magazine Award General Excellence finalist. It has been around for 40 years. Senator Elizabeth Warren has said Mothers Jones is the smart, aggressive journalism that shines a light on some of the most significant issues facing our country. And I believe she is truly correct. I want to conclude this podcast by saying these things. America stands at a crossroads, so do you. The actions of Trump and his allies are not just reckless, they are dangerous to our democracy, our allies, and the very fabric of this nation. We must all recognize the deception, reject the lies, and demand leadership that values truth, integrity, and the well-being of all citizens. And that is not what's happening here. And it will not happen without us standing up. Those who once believed in Trump's promises must now face the reality. He's loyal is to power and wealth, not the American people. The time is to act now, to speak up, vote, and ensure that our country is not sacrificed for the selfish ambitions of a few. And you know who that few include. Thank you for listening.